Hello everyone. So our speakers have joined. So it's the time we should start the session. Meanwhile, people will keep on joining us. So once again, I welcome you all to the masterclass series by Pragmatic Leader. Today, the topic for today's masterclass is Cross the Chasm, Product Manager to Product Leader. I'm so glad to see you all here. Before we start today's session, I'd like to give you all a brief about Pragmatic Leaders. We built Pragmatic Leaders as a bridge for mid-career technology professionals to confidently change roles or careers. At Pragmatic Leaders, you're a part of a global family of aspirational professionals who are in aspirational professionals who proactively help each other and are invested in each other's career growth. We offer the pay after placement program in product management, which is completely online and case study based for working professionals who are looking to transition into product roles and for professionals looking to upskill into product management. With 79% placement rate, our students are placed at product managers at brands like Walmart, PayPal, Paytm, Amazon, LimeRoad, and other reputed brands with an average 50% salary hike. For more details, you can reach out to our website that is www.pragmaticleaders.io. And our speakers for today's session are experienced product leaders who brings in 16 plus years of work experience. Today we have Praveen Patankar, sir, Director of Product Management at High Radius, Rono Jacob, Director of Product Management at Dhruva, Nagendra Gururaj, Director of Product Management at Talview. We welcome you all, and we are really excited to have you all as speakers with us tonight. So before we get started, I want to introduce some housekeeping rules. So if you have questions during the session, please type them into the chats window. And you can also raise your hands to ask your questions directly. We will take 1-2 questions related to the session's topic once the speakers are done with their presentation. And we also have a Q&A session at the very end where all our 3 speakers will be participating to answer your questions. With this note, we can begin the masterclass with the first session, the role of product manager in digital transformation with Praveen Patankar. So he brings in 16 plus years of experience in product management and project management, delivering innovative product to solve business problems and growing existing products at a global scale. As I mentioned earlier, he's working as Director of Product Management at High Radius. And previously, he has worked in product space with companies like Blue Yonder and JDA Software. He also managed a multi-million-dollar project portfolio at Cognizant Technology Solution for a Fortune 500 retailer in US. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over the session to Praveen, sir. Please, Praveen, sir, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Priyanka. Can you guys hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a lot. First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time out on Saturday evening. Okay, I know all of us are, have a lot of professional and the personal commitments, but you guys taking time out.
Exactly how I feel every week of my life.
Okay, yeah. So going back, yeah, I think let's start the session. Okay, I just want to make sure that okay, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any time. And as Priyanka mentioned, we have another 30 minutes or so towards the end of the session to also take the questions for you might have for my segment or Nagendra or the Reno segment as well. Okay, so let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right, can you see my screen?
Oh, yes, but
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Priyanka. All right, then let's get started. Okay, so the part that I'm going to talk about today is essentially what is the digital transformation essentially. Okay, and then what is the role that the product manager and the product leaders play in making or leading that digital transformation. Okay, we hear a lot of jargons around the digital transformation, IoTs, and the machine learning and the artificial intelligence, etc. But then, what does it really mean? Okay, for the product manager to be part of that digital transformation journey. Okay, and what are the opportunities? What are the skills that we need? Okay, so to begin with, okay, or in terms of the agenda, I would like to really keep it brief, okay, and I will be more than happy to drill down into a particular section or answer your questions if you have any. So let's look at what is a digital transformation first. Then we'll break down the role of the product leader in making that or leading that digital transformation. Okay, and very important part of the product leader is building the right team for that kind of transformation, because it's not only you building the product, but it's essentially working with the sales and the operations and the different cross-functional teams to be able to make the impact on the business outcomes. Right. So, what are the key characteristics of those teams who can make this happen? Okay, and finally, I'm an avid reader. Okay, I would like to also suggest some readings for you guys as well. Okay, if you want to take this or in general the product management subject forward. Okay, so let's start with the an overview of the digital transformation. Okay, so as you can understand, the business transformation is nothing but a change management, and that too the change management to the fundamentals of the business, right? So fundamental changes that changes the way the business works. Okay, it changes the entire paradigm in which the business operates. Okay, and the objective of such changes are essentially to make your personal processes and the technology to compete better, okay, or be more efficient in the market, right? So we see a lot of companies going through the business transformations as they become more incompetent, so to say, or they lose their way in terms of the innovation or the customer value or different business challenges that they face, right? So that's what the business of transformation is. Okay, now you'd be astonished to see the drastic changes that the business undergo to in order to survive. Okay, a good example is audio. Okay, I don't know how many of you had heard of this company. Okay, but this is the company, okay, which was started by an ex-Googler called as Evan Williams. Okay, and he started the company as a podcasting company, okay, to distribute the podcast, to be able to market the podcast for the different artists. But as he was getting near to the product completion, Apple came out with its own podcast, right? And the since the Apple was really ahead in terms of the market share, Okay, this guy had to kill his company because the podcasting will be completely driven by the Apple or the different app stores, right? So he couldn't make any progress on it, and these guys were really in dilemma in terms of what to do next, right? So they started something called as hackathons, okay, for their own employees, okay, and one of that employees' name was Jack Dorsey. Okay, so Jack's idea was, why don't we design an app, a system, or website so that you can send one SMS and it goes to a multiple group of friends, right? And that's when that idea was taken up, and then that was developed further to become what we know today as Twitter, right? So we can't imagine audio becoming a podcasting company to the texting company to the now social media platform, right? Another such example in Indian context is nothing but ITC, right? So ITC started in 1910 as Imperial Tobacco Company of India Limited, right? That was pre-independence, and their objective was to manufacture the tobaccos and cigarettes, right? But today, when you look at the ITC, it's completely transformed. There is no relationship with the original intent with which the ITC started. It even the tobacco products, even though they manufacture and they're one of the largest cigarette manufacturing company in India, right? Still, the tobaccos or the cigarettes don't even feature into their own self-image, brand image of ITC. They even changed their name to just ITC Limited, and that's about it. There is no full form of ITC now, right? So a lot of these business transformation stories are all around us, right? But when this transformation is driven by the digital technologies, okay, that's where the digital transformation comes into picture. Okay, it's all about how do you empower our employees, how do you give them the more decision making tools that they need, okay, in order to be more efficient. How do you engage with your customer? It's all about the customer journey, user journey. That do you understand your customer not only from the moment they walk into your store, not only when they walk into or visit your website, but even their pre-visit or pre-purchase journey as well, right? So that's about engaging with your customer. How do you optimize your operation? Of course, efficiency is the most critical aspect for any business, right? So how do you optimize your operations using the digital technologies, right? And finally, how do you transform your products or services into something that is more desirable to the customer, something that is more efficient, or the services that has a moat around them. Okay, so that's about the digital transformation. So if you want to see some of the examples of digital transformation, okay, let's see a couple of case studies. Okay. Okay, give me a moment. Okay, so let's look at some of the case studies. Okay, in terms of the company that have done the digital transformation successfully. Okay, or at least they are on the path to do it successfully, right? So I recently bought a home, right? And then as for every home buyer, okay, it takes a lot of time to do the interior work, to work with the interior designer, right? Select the laminate, select the colors, and etc., right? And I have been visiting this Marino Laminates website, okay, quite often, right? So they have this visualizer in their website where you can choose the different combinations of the colors, and then you can literally look at how your house is going to be, okay, when you use a different laminates that they have. Now, a laminate company, okay, 10 years back, you may not have ever imagined that they'll have such an heavy digital presence, right? Another good example is IndusInd Bank. Okay, so IndusInd Bank has an offering called as On the Go. Okay, so literally you can connect with them on the Twitter and Facebook, and using certain predefined hashtags, you can literally do the transactions, transfer, check your balance, make the transfers and stuff like that, right? Not even a need to open their own app. It's all on your social app, because that's where you are spending most of the time, right? So that's another example. And if you look around, you'll see a lot of such examples right in India, right? Be it Asian Paints, who have drastically changed the way the paint industry works, right? So not every paint has to be manufactured and shipped to the dealer and distributor and to the end store, right? Rather, they came up with this amazing innovation with the mixing machines. So you only manufacture a certain set of paints and ship those to the last store, and the store is going to be the last, say, manufacturing facility for you, where you can exactly manufacture the 2200 shades that the customers need, right? But you have greatly simplified your entire supply chain, okay, with this kind of innovations. Okay, same with the Kotak and IRCTC, and a lot of such examples in India, right? So now, if digital transformation is taking over almost every sector, okay, what are the factors, what are the forces that are driving this digital transformation, right? So first and foremost thing is for the millennial customer, and not only millennial customer, even the customers who have no internet access, no say only partial education, or probably even no education at all, are the ones who are expecting the digital services from the companies, right? So someone who has never used a computer is able to use a mobile phone. Someone who has never sent an email is able to use your WhatsApp and the Android devices, right? So all of those customers are now expecting, okay, digital to be the primary mode of relationship with the businesses and the enterprise, right? Second one, and probably most important one, that has accelerated the digital transformation, is nothing but the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and I would like to stress on the global part of it, because had this been a pandemic in a country or in a region, okay, we may not have seen such a huge common drive towards digital collaboration, okay, across the world, right? So, in fact, as Satya Nadella said, Microsoft, and this was in last year April, which was like 2 years, 2 months in the pandemic, and then that time he described the all the digital transformation he was seeing, and the Microsoft was helping its customer, right? He mentioned that he has seen the 2 years worth of digital transformation within 2 months. Okay, that was like last year. Now we are already nearly 2 years in the pandemic. Okay, so we have seen much more activity towards the digital transformation across the board. Another driving factor is the changes in the customer expectations, right? So customers now expect the businesses to be more digital, more real time, right? And then their expectations to only work within the store timings, or the factory timings, or even the bank timings have all been changed, right? So they want the exact same omni-channel experience that they will get in the store, okay, online as well, or on your digital channels as well, right? The an important factor is the employee empowerment. So if you see, you and I, we are used to the weekend experience, Sunday experience, I will call it, right? In using the WhatsApps and the Facebooks and the Twitters and the consumer world applications that are vying for our attention, that are actually doing everything in the world to make sure our experience is improved over time, right? So now, when you go to the office on Monday, we have to deal with the applications that look like tables and tables of the data with the very difficult navigations and user experience. Probably not, right? So even the employees desire to have the same Sunday experience on Monday is also driving a lot of digital transformation in the enterprise world. Okay, and finally, the operational efficiency is definitely a factor, okay, to go digital. Okay, again, it's not digitization, but even transforming some of your business processes, okay, with the digital technologies. Okay.
Happy Saturday. Okay.
Okay, now another important thing that is currently happening in the market, that when you and I talk about the the product management, most of the time we think about the technology companies being the key market for the product management, right? So be it Ubers or be it digital first companies like Twitters and Amazons and whatnot, right? But now the non-technology companies across the world, India, US, or Europe, anywhere you go, the traditional non-technology companies are now playing the digital catch-up game, and they're actually doing a lot better when it comes to adapting to the digital technologies. A good example is Walmart, right? So Walmart not only became so good at the digital technologies, not only for e-commerce websites or anything that is consumer facing, but also they have revamped the entire supply chain, right from the planning to the execution to the customer experience, that now Amazon is being forced to come into the physical world, right, to buy the whole food, or go with the Amazon Go stores, right? So and in India as well, if you see, a lot of these traditional companies are going to be a big opportunity area for product management, in order to transform their businesses with the digital technologies. And there are some stats globally. The digital transformation market will go with a CAGR of 16.5% from now on till 2025. While in APAC, the expenditure or the growth will be slightly higher to 20.1%, right? And India and China being the engines of the APAC growth, a lot of that investment, a lot of that opportunity will show up in India as well. And what are the industries that are that are rapidly getting digitized, rapidly getting onto this journey? We already know banking, healthcare, education. A lot of our the next generation is now online, and going through Byju's classes and their online schools and stuff like that, right? Media and entertainment, we see n number of the streaming apps that are being floated during this pandemic time. In fact, I myself haven't had the cable connection for 2 years now. Okay, and then I don't even miss it, right? Because there are be it Hotstar, or be it Amazon Prime, or be it Netflix. A lot of the contents that I need is available to me at the time I need it, right? So it's it's just one another area where the digital transformation has taken a all new avatar of itself, right? However, having said that, there are a lot of the other industries which are not as mature or as tech savvy, okay, as they should be, right? Retail being a good example. Retail, manufacturing, government, right? Transportation and logistics. So these are the industries which have begun their journey towards the being more digital, being more uh, at the forefront of the technology, or using the technology for their operations. But these are the areas which will open up more, and we'll see a lot of activity in these areas for us to make a difference. Okay. So now we know what is the digital transformation, and we also know what is driving it, what are the industries that are right for the digital transformation, particularly in India, right? So now let's look at how do we see a product leader playing a role in, or leading this digital transformation, right? So first, what are the changes in the mindset, or what are the skills that we need in order to be part of this journey? Okay. So first and foremost is like few of you, I also come from the project background, right? So I have done the technology development, consulting, project management, and then finally I moved into the product management role, right? So first and foremost for many of us is to change in the mindset. How do you change your project-oriented mindset, where we have the fixed budget, fixed schedule, fixed objectives, requirements that are frozen a lot ahead of time, right? So how do you change that project-oriented mindset into the product-oriented mindset? Because product is kind of enduring. It has multiple projects of its own over the period of the product's life cycle, right? So there are a lot of these factors that I wanted to highlight. Now, in the interest of time, I may not want to go into each of these factors. But the key one being here that as a product manager, okay, we need to be more focus on the long term business outcomes, okay, how much value we add to the business over achieving the particular objective as a project's objective on time and on budget. Okay. So that's first, first thing we need to take care of. Second one is how do you focus more on the customers, right? So digital transformation is more about a customer delight, more about customers' happiness than it is about the technology. It's not about standing up on a website. It's not about standing up an app, or it's not about starting an e-commerce, e-commerce channel for you, right? But instead it's about how do you take the technology and really delight your customers. So as the Mark Benioff of Salesforce says, every digital transformation is going to begin and end with the customer, right? And that's the ultimate goal. As a product manager, you are an advocate for the customer. You have to keep the customer in mind right from the beginning all the way to the end, and along the way. Okay. So as I mentioned, in this particular sector, when we talk about the digital transformation, okay, customer is nothing but user or the customer. Okay, and then as a product manager, you not only know the customer, but you need to also know the domain. If you are going for a digital transformation initiative for a pharmaceutical company, you better know something about the pharmaceutical. If you're going for a financial institution like ICICI, right? You better know something about the banking, right? You need not to be an expert in the domain, but you need to know enough to understand your customers, right? Same about the technology as well. You need not to be the best of the technologies out there, right? But you need to know the technology just enough to know how much. Sorry. Okay, so you need to know the technology at least enough to know what are the possibilities it offers to your journey as a product manager. All right, and of course you need to know your revenues, what are the key metrics for your business, okay, and then know what are your objectives, right? So you need to know the business for sure, right? So as a product manager, okay, you can actually be in the middle of the a lot of these digital transformation initiatives that are being undertaken by a lot of these traditional companies today. Right. So that was first shift from the project to the product mindset. Second one was focus on the customer. I mean, being obsessive about the customer delight. And the third one that as a product manager we need to do, we need to have is the data-driven decision-making skills, right? So today you have data, or you can collect the data for your own applications, your own initiatives, your own business processes from multiple channels, right? How do you leverage that data, okay, throughout the product lifecycle, be it a discovery of the feature functions or the product, be it a road mapping, be it how do you go to the market with the feature, how do you onboard a user or the customer, right? Throughout the life cycle, you need to keep the data in your mind and then derive the insights that will help you at different stages of the product life cycle, right? However, one of the things that we have to be careful about is how do you balance hard data, okay, with your own instinct, right? So beware of your confirmation bias that I think the feature X is going to be more meaningful for the users, and then you go around trying to find out the data that supports your own bias, right? So be aware of it. In fact, as Jeff Bezos says, most of the right decisions he made, both in the professional and the personal life, have been driven more by his instinct and less by the data, right? So data is important, but it's not all about the data, right? Then as a product manager, the key that you need to know is what metrics matter to your business, right? So you are looking at the data, but what insights you draw from the data, it depends on the metrics that matter to your own business, your own product, right? And of course, those metrics depend on a lot of variables, be it a company type, industry, stage of the product, right? Or even organization's own goals as well, right? So you want to grow the company, or you want to compete with the competition, or you want to just go into the newer innovation areas, right? So a lot of those factors play into the selection of the metrics that matter for your own product. Okay, but out of these metrics, you need to have at least one North Star metric. Okay, so that's the guiding star for you. So be it a employee, see, user retention, or user acquisition, or be it a net promoter score, whatever it is, right? You need to have one metric that is your guiding principle throughout. So you should never ever lose the sight of that metric. Okay. So what are some of the skills you need, okay, for the data-driven decision making? Okay, you of course need to be able to interpret the data. You need to be able to dive into the data and be aware of some of the statistical methods, right? Be it multivariate regression or logistic linear regression, right? You need to be able to have those statistical background, but at the same time, you need to be able to draw those insights and then really be able to tell the story to your team. Okay, that the direction that you want the team to go, you need to be able to support that direction, tell that story using the data, right? So that's really important as a product manager. And then especially in the digital transformation journey, when you are talking to non-techie people, like be it sales team, operations team, marketing team, right? In the traditional companies. So you need to be able to really get those insights from the data and be able to communicate to the people who don't really understand the technology, right? And final and the fourth, as I emphasized in the previous slide, is to encourage to have a leap of faith decisions, right? Even if the data is not enough, even if the data probably is ambiguous, you should be able to have the conviction, okay, to go and make the decisions, okay, product decisions, based on your own instinct as well, right? And that instinct comes from you understanding the domain, you understanding the technology, and you understanding the business. Okay. And finally, apart from the previous point that I mentioned, another important aspect for the product leader is to be able to experiment. Okay, experiment with the products, experiment with the feature functions, right? And then try out different ideas to be able to get to the right idea, right? So we may not have to go through the entire process as part of this session, but let's quickly talk about some of the techniques you can use, okay, for the experimentation. A/B test, most of you must be aware of the A/B testing, where you assign the randomly assign the users to one or the other experiment, right, and then see their outcomes. And when the A/B test is done with multiple variables, okay, it becomes your multivariate testing, right? So instead of only one variable, you are changing multiple variables and trying to find out what's the best experience for the user, right? Same thing with the funnel experiments as well, right? So in this case, you're not only looking at say a finite set of variables, but rather you are looking at the user's journey, be it say a checkout journey, for example, when you are on an e-commerce website, right? Or it could also be the time lapse as well, to see, okay, how the benchmarks of key KPIs, okay, compare over a period of time. Okay. So those are the key aspects of the product leader, okay, to lead the digital transformation. But the most important one is how do you build the right team, okay? And now, as I mentioned, when you are in these traditional companies, okay, or even in the technology companies, the key being is building the cross-functional team, okay, that rallies around the product, okay, and is hyper focused, super focused on the customer. Okay, that's the only thing that matters. You eat, sleep, die with the customer, right? So that's what the entire team needs to do. The skills for this kind of team matter, include data-driven mindset, of course, right? The passion and the collaboration and the empathy for the customer. Okay, and yeah, I think I'll skip the how do you take the buy-in from the highest levels, right? But the key is your team has to be with you as a product manager, okay? And they should be convinced, they should be equally passionate and they empathetic to the customer and the user, okay? Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover. Okay, I think I'm 5 minutes over, I believe, right? But to just emphasize, as a product leader, you need to shift your mindset from project to the product, right? You need to be able to, super focus on the customer. Okay, start and end everything with the customer. Make the data-driven decisions, right? Experiment a lot, fail a lot, but and learn from those experiments, and finally build the right team, okay, to rally for your vision and your strategy for the product. Okay, and finally, as I mentioned, okay, I'm an avid reader, okay, and I would like to just recommend few of the books for you guys as well, just for your future reference if you want to just go and learn more about the product management from some of the best authors out there. Okay, so with that, I'll stop sharing the screen. If you have any question, I can take those now. Or Priyanka, do you want me to pass it on to the next presenter?
As I mentioned, like if you have any question, you can ask him right away, or we can just move to the second session. But I don't see any questions, so I think we should move ahead with the second session. Thank you so much, sir. So now we'll move to the second session of the masterclass with Rono Jacob, Director of Product Management at Dhruva. So he brings in 17 plus years of experience. He is experienced in building a SaaS and on-premise solution around storage and configuration automation for enterprises. Previously, he has worked with BMC Software as a senior product manager, and currently he is handling the product ownership of Cloud Ranger, a SaaS-based platform for data protection and disaster recovery of AWS cloud environments. So here now I would like to hand over the session to Rono Jacob, sir. And today he'll be speaking on the topic, shifting focus from design and execution to vision and strategy. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Priyanka, and great presentation, Praveen. Always good to hear about the digital transformation. So over to the second session of this masterclass. Today we'll be talking about how do you shift focus from design and execution to strategy and vision. Over the course of this presentation, I hope to start with some of the basic things and then talk you through how you could take that transition, or how you could step up through the journey. So before we start, I just want to put a question to the audience here today. How do you connect? Do you actually connect with the features that you are developing today? Do you connect with the strategic outcomes that are there with it? Are you able to see the bigger picture or the strategic outcomes with the features that you're developing today? It's something for you to go back and think through. Is that something that you connect with? If you're out there nodding your head and saying, no, this is not something I truly understand today, what my company's outcomes are and how these are helping, then you don't need to feel left out, because numerous surveys today shows that a lot of product managers today are in the same boat, where a key challenge is understanding, what are we building and how does it help the bigger picture to work with. The good news is, hopefully through this presentation, I'll be able to walk you through some of those steps that can help you understand the vision and strategy that you should be looking at and how you could take the steps to build towards that direction. So very quickly, since we're talking about vision and strategy, I just want to start with, what is a vision? What is a vision? So vision, it describes what a company is going to do and what it wants to be. A vision could be at a company level. If you have a product portfolio, a vision could essentially also be a product vision that you have. A vision is a long-term view. It's an aspirational view. It kind of sets out saying, this is what we really want to be. It's a statement that you're making out there and saying, this is where, how we think as a company to go with. An example of that is Netflix. Netflix vision is becoming the best global entertainment distribution service. That's a vision that they have put out, saying this is what we want to do. On the other hand, strategy, it describes the steps which help the company achieve its vision. In other words, it's a high-level plan that tells you, how do you actually look at a vision, whether it's your company vision, whether it's your product vision, how are you actually going to achieve that? A strategic document or a strategy document typically would comprise of goals, initiatives, and then you would have a roadmap as a part of it. It would also have your vision. And it's that high-level plan that crystallizes and tells you, to meet this particular vision, we're going to have so-and-so initiatives. Against each of these initiatives, we're going to have some goals against it, or you could have goals and initiatives that run in parallel. And then you have a list of roadmap items that, the directional big items that you're thinking of how you want to rally around it. Now that we've looked at vision and strategy, the obvious question is, do we really need a vision and strategy? After all, as product managers, we are building stuff, we understand what the customer wants, we are doing the interviews. If you're working in a mature product, you have this huge backlog of items that need to be done. So do we really need a vision and a strategy? Well, one of the reasons, or the key areas when you look from a vision and strategy perspective is, why do we really need it? A vision and a strategy is so relevant because a vision and a strategy helps you align to the outcomes that you're looking at. So when you start to work on things, when you're starting to build something out, and you want to understand where is the bigger picture, where is it heading out, if you have it laid out in a format which says, this is the vision, this is the strategy, these are the goals, these are the initiatives, it gives you a very, very clear picture on what you're building against what initiative you want to associate with. And therefore, you can come together to understand, okay, this is the overall outcome that will happen with what I'm doing. The second part of it is communicating with stakeholders, communicating with a wider audience within your organization. Now, remember, as product managers, we would be working on a lot of features, we would be talking to a lot of discussions, and a lot of the information that we have with us is sometimes tribal knowledge. The way we see things is not how the entire audience in a company would look at it. And for that matter, even sometimes when we talk to our customers and we're talking to them the direction, they may not see it. But as we take this vision and strategy and you present it to the customer, or when you present it to the internal teams, it starts to bring that communication. They say, okay, now I can understand, this is the strategy, this is why you're building it, this is how this is the steps that we're taking towards it. The last and the more important one for us from a day-to-day operation perspective is with prioritization and resource allocation. So when you have a strategy out there and, when you're looking to do a lot of things on your plate as a product manager, I'm sure many of you would always be in a position where you say, there's so many things we could do. Why don't we do this feature? Why don't we do this particular area? Why we shouldn't be going to this particular line? Look at what competition is doing. Look at what this person is doing. And, you have a lot of ideas that come on your plate. But what the vision and strategy helps you do is it helps you have that clear oversight or that guideline, which helps you understand, okay, with this vision, with this strategy, it's important for me to now start to prioritize things, to allocate the best amount of my resources or my investments in this direction so that the overall strategy plays out and therefore it gets me closer to the vision. So that's why, when you look at it from a vision and strategy perspective, it's important for an organization or as a product team or a product to have a vision and a strategy to work with. Now, when we talk about a vision and a strategy, we also, as product managers, start to ask ourselves, okay, strategy is important. We need to be having a strategy, but I really want to be a strategic product manager. And what I want to know at this point of time really is, from building a product to launching a product to its marketing part of it, what constitutes a strategy? What should I be thinking more from a strategic perspective? Early on in my career, when I started out as a product manager, I came from an engineering background. I was a developer, and then I shifted to product management. And when I made that shift, I was very early in the game, and I really did not understand the entire facets of what product management was. And at the same time, I also did not understand what it took to actually build a product and market it out. So when I looked at it in that sense, the pragmatic marketing framework, which is available out there, and if something you haven't seen, was an eye-opener to me to help me understand, as a product manager, as when you're looking to build your products, what does it involve? The Pragmatic marketing framework talks about what it takes to build and market products, and it puts around all these activities or areas that you need to be looking at when it comes to building and marketing products. Now, if you look at this image out here in front of you, what this framework talks about is, on the left-hand side, you have the strategy. On the right-hand side, you have execution. And it lists out all the items from left to right from a strategic and execution perspective. The top part talks about what you need to be looking at from a market perspective, and the bottom part talks about what you need to be doing from a product perspective. So once you start to look at all of these pictures, you start to understand, or you start to see things in a very different way. And when you're starting to look at things from a design and execution perspective, the next question that comes up, say, what does it take to be strategic? What else should I be looking at? And you start to see, there's so many elements that it takes to building and marketing a product. Now, all of these functions you probably may not be involved in, but at the same time, as a product manager, you may touch some of these items depending upon what stage or what responsibilities you hold in your organization. These responsibilities are broadly broken up between product managers and product marketing, or the marketing organization that you see. But it's important as a product manager, when you start to think of it from a strategic perspective, that you start to understand all these pillars. For this session, what we'll do is we'll pick on one of these, and then we'll go a little deeper into it. Market problems, I'm going to take this into a little bigger concept around problems. How should you be looking at problems, and how do you want to look at it in a wider perspective? So problem identification and definition. We all write requirements out there. We all build the product. The genesis of our product is to actually solve a particular need for a customer. And when we look at it from that perspective, what we usually do is, we have statements, or, there's a backlog that we work against. We get ideas. We have all sorts of people telling us what we should be doing in the product. Most of the time, what we get coming to us are, solutions. You need to be adding this, or I need this particular option in the product, or I need you to be building this particular integration. And often what happens in this scenario is we are caught within symptoms, but not actually to the actual problem. Now, as a step to that, what we do is we end up conducting interviews, we do data analysis, and then we arrive at what the real problem is. So I wanted to put this perspective to you. As you start to look at the problem identification and definition, it's important that as you look at it from your day-to-day operational part of it, where you're caught heavily into a lot of tasks that you're doing as a product manager, it's important to set out time in your calendar, in your time, where you structure the way you go about identifying a problem. And that part means, you're doing interviews in a more structured manner. Interviews, customer interviews, there's the concept of a customer interview. I would like to call it as who are you building it from? Who is the user? Who's the person that you're catering to? And this could mean that you end up talking to a wide variety of people. You could be talking to existing customers. You could be talking to prospects. You could be calling somebody, internally who's front facing to a customer to understand what that problem is. And I would say go deeper till you understand, what the real problem is out there. That's the first step. So to help you identify the problem. Now that you understand the problem, the second part involved into it is really in the definition of the problem. Now these are two different items. Identifying a problem and defining the problem are very different things. Once you know, okay, this is what the pain is, the definition of the problem that you want to solve for, it can take multiple shapes. You can go from a narrow perspective, you can actually make it a broader perspective. And this is where your vision and strategy comes very, very tightly aligned to it. So as you understand the problem and you start to do your research around it, having a tighter look at your vision and strategy, aligning to it, helps you frame the right set of the definition of the problem that you want to solve for. The third part, obviously, is, with these two in place, you now want to look at it from a prioritization and an opportunity perspective. Why solve this problem? How critical this problem it is to solve? And broadly, from a business perspective, what you should be considering when you're looking to tackle a problem is, what does it do for my product? Is it going to build differentiation? Will I be able to monetize this capability? Or from my existing customer perspective, is this going to give me a loyalty and a growth kind of a strategy out there? What is this problem really going to solve? Now, as you start to make this as a practice to do identification, definition, and then categorize it in your priority and opportunity perspective, what you start to see in this course is you're slowly moving away from a tactical way of looking at a problem to looking at it in a much bigger perspective. But to give you a very specific example to it, around 5-6 years ago at Dhruva Software, as Priyanka mentioned, we are in the business of data protection. In very simple terms, to put it out there, if you are an organization that you work in, the organization that you work in, you as end users in your organization could be using your laptops or your desktops or any of your applications out there. Now, the laptop sitting out there, you could be holding a lot of critical information, you could be working on projects, and you could have information out there. And therefore, the data needs to be backed up in the rare event that your laptop crashes, or in the more recent cybersecurity scenarios, if there is a ransomware attack and your entire laptop, so your entire network is compromised, you could be losing a lot of data. So 5-6 years ago, we had a flagship product that focused around protecting these laptops and desktops. And what we ended up seeing was, with the advent of SaaS starting to pick up, we started to see a lot of companies come forward and say, Office 365, for those who are familiar with Office 365 or G Suite, if you're using one of those, we started to see this trend where customers came back and said, look, I have Office 365, OneDrive is available for free, and we're just going to ask my users to dump their data out there and then be done with it, so I don't really need a backup solution. Now, this presented a problem to us because our sales would come back and tell us, look, we have this situation on the ground where, some of the customers are coming in and saying, they don't need a backup solution. Now, it's important to understand that the way we offer our solution to a customer versus the way a customer thinks of it, that's where you start to understand how important it is to identify the opportunity. To a customer, your solution, which you're presenting at this point of time, maybe, I have an alternative. The alternative might not be exactly a backup solution, but it's a good enough solution. It meets my need. In our case, we started to hear that come up in a lot of opportunities. So we spent time looking at it. We did the obvious things that you do. You started to explain backup and putting data in Drive, the pros and cons, started to message it out. But when you start to do all of this, you win some, you lose some, and you start to see this problem out there. So what we did from that perspective was we sat down with the customer, and we started going through this discovery phase with the customer to pin down the problem. And we started to see that as the customer started to adopt Office 365, they was now starting to create a new set of corporate information that they were parking in Office 365. Their mailboxes, their OneDrive, and none of this data was sitting anywhere in the on-premise world. They didn't have it stored anywhere. And they were all under the assumption that Office 365 always implicitly had backups, so there was nothing to worry about it. To us, what that meant was, when we looked at the problem, we started to peel it out and said, okay, so the real problem is not that the customer doesn't want a solution to safeguard his enterprise data, but the real problem here is the customer is confusing the fact that that he has two different sources and one circumvents another. We then spent time understanding, how should we look at this problem? How should we frame it out? And we started digging deeper into Office 365. And that's where the definition started to fold for us, going from a narrow view to a broader view. We ended up realizing that from an organization perspective, first, Office 365 data was very critical to them. Two, they existed a new market that was emerging with new workloads that were forming out there, where a customer wanted that data also to be safeguarded. And it aligned with our overall vision, which said we wanted to be protecting all enterprise data out there. So we took that as a problem. We defined the problem, saying we now need to solve for Office 365 backup. And that led us to build out a problem, led us to build out a solution around it. And we took a broader strategy. And why I'm giving you this example is, every once in a while, when you sit down to solve these problems with your customers and you do these interviews, it's so important to the way you structure your interview. It's so important to ask the customer to give you his scenarios, rather than you lead with those questions. So having that habit of writing open-ended questions that you can ask your customer to get a feel of his environment, what are his challenges, is very important to actually identify and define the problem. The problem presents the opportunity. The problem helps you think in a broader perspective, saying, is there a new market that we can go and tap into? Will the customer pay money if we offer a new solution? What does it do to our overall vision? What does it do to our overall strategy? So that's how you should be looking at when you look at the problem definition and perspective to solve with. Now, we talked about the vision, we talked about strategy, we talked about the frameworks, and I want to leave you today with some recommendations on, how can you start to shift from design and execution, if that's what you're doing predominantly, and to start to think about vision and strategy and have a strategic view. How do you start to do that? The first thing you should be doing, really looking to do, is being aligned to outcomes. Now, if you don't understand what your company's mission and strategy is, I would say that's step one. Sit down with your leadership team, or if there's some document around there, understand what is the company's vision and strategy. Next, look at your product strategy. If you're a part of your leadership team, well and good. If you're not there with your leadership team and this is something that you never paid attention to, seek out and ask, what is our product strategy? What is it that we are doing, and what are our goals and initiatives that we need to work against? If there is none that exists today, you're probably in a company that is still molding up, and you have the task to do it. I would encourage you to start to put together a draft document of the goals and initiatives to do it. This structure helps you to understand whatever you're building on, what are the outcomes that you would seek to achieve with it. And that's a very important step that you need to take. The second is discovery and stakeholder interactions. Now, if you're working in an area where you don't know what your market is, I would tell you that's the second thing that you should go and look at. Focus on your market, understand what your market is. A question that I hear from folks coming in and saying is, well, we have no market, we're building something net new, there is actually no market. I would tell you the answer to that is no. It's not that there is no market. It's just that probably from a definition perspective, maybe from an analyst report perspective, there isn't a dedicated market that you're working in, but you're probably a part of a broader market out there. And it's often important to understand in that broader market, where does your product sit? What is your TAM? What is your total addressable market? What is your total addressable market that you're working into? So that's the second thing that you should be looking at. The third area is competitive landscape. Again, a misnomer that many of us have is, look, there is no competition. And we often associate competition saying direct competitors. The reality of the fact is, from a customer's perspective, if you are solving a problem for a customer, the customer has today an alternative. After all, he has a problem. He wants it solved, so he's either using some alternative to solve it. That solution could be an homegrown solution. That solution could be using a good enough product to meet what his current use cases. And it's important for you to understand this part of it. Where's your competition? What are your competition doing? And where is your strength to go and do it? We talked about interviews. Again, I would repeat this. Spend enough time in a month blocking your calendars out. Practice a methodical way of taking interviews. Going into interviews and asking a yes or no question really doesn't give you much. And if you're building a feature, you're going into the customer and saying, look, we're going to model it in this workflow. Would it work for you? And the customer say yes. And they say, I'm going to be building this feature and it's going to be solving this. Would you be interested in it? And he says yes. Are very, very different questions from telling the customer, look, we're building this capability. We're going to be offering it at a higher premium. Is that something that you would look at as an example? And that would tell you really, how much does the customer value your feature? Is it something that the customer puts a premium on it, or does he kindly see it in a different way? You also have to step into understanding open-ended questions. This comes with practice. So I would encourage you, before you do this, is whenever you go for interviews, set up the way of writing open-ended questions. It is very hard to do it at the initial time, so that you allow the customer to give you his environment, his perspective, and without you leading him to conclusions too quickly. The last part of it, when you look at the discovery and stakeholder interactions, is talk to your cross-functional teams. Now, if you're caught in this vacuum where, you believe customers versus the engineering and product teams, especially if you're on the technical side of product management, is all you need to be doing, I would encourage you strongly to go and talk to your support teams. They hear the customers, they are the ones bearing the brunt often of an angry customer. And when it gets escalated, you might be invited to be a part of the call. But talk to them, and they have the real pulse on the ground. The second group you might even be interested to talk to is your marketing team. Go to your marketing team and ask them, hey, I'm really curious to know what campaigns we run for our products. What are the campaigns that are there? What is our lead generation? Can you give me insights around this? what is our our SQLs, our MQLs that we look at? What is the ratio that happens? And this starts to broaden your scope to understand, from building something that you're building from a technical perspective to a feature, how is it actually all adding up? How are you selling this feature? How does it become available to customers? How are you putting it out there? The third one is solutions options that you're looking to build. Again, we talked about the pragmatic marketing framework, and I hope some of you who haven't seen it would actually go back and look at it. And this is something that very early in my career, I made this often mistake because I came from an engineering background. And for me, it meant a solution to a problem is to build a feature. And I would always approach it in that way. I would encourage you to look at it from a more holistic approach, from looking at building features to asking yourselves, is there a partnership that we could solve for? Is there an OEM way to do it? Is this simply as good as just building an integration? Is this a pricing area that we need to tackle? Why are we losing opportunities? Is it a pricing conversation? Is it a discounting conversation? Do I really need to be adjusting my licensing? Where does it need to go to solve a particular problem? When it comes to delivering features, again, something that I would leave you with is, again, if you're on the technical side of it and you write the requirements, you work with a UX counterpart, you build the mockups, you're done, work with engineering, you go through the scrums, you release it, and then you put your hands up. Here's again something that I would encourage you to think at. When you look at your features, ask yourself, how is the user going to consume it? If you have a sales team, if your product is complex, ask yourself, the people who are going in front of the customer, how are they going to explain your product? How are they going to present this product to the customer? How are they going to explain these features? Do you have a best practices guide? Do you have a recommendation on how they should do it? Remember, when you go to a showroom today to buy something, the salesman out there who tells you how to buy your product is the one who is the same way, who's championing how your product or your features grow. So it's important for you to have this holistic view as you start to build out features. And as product managers, you plugging yourself into all of these facets to understand it will help you move around from, taking a tactical approach to seeing things more from a vision and a strategic perspective. The last part is, if you have time on your bandwidth, I'm sure as product managers, your days are always packed with a lot of things. But if you are, you have bandwidth on your time and you have a team that would work, willing to work with you, you have your counterparts, I would encourage you to a monthly practice of presenting mini business plans. Wherever you think there is a feature or a capability that you're presenting and you think there's a bigger opportunity that could come out, develop the habit of presenting mini business plans. It will help you see things in a much, much broader perspective, and it will slowly groom you up to look at things more from a vision and a strategic perspective. So to recap, we talked about the need for vision and strategy. We talked about what are the frameworks that are involved to building and marketing activities. We looked at how to identify and define problems, and then we looked at the steps that you could take today to be a strategic product leader. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I do see there's a question out there. Yes, Yasha, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, hi Ronak. Thank you so much. I think it was a very insightful presentation. When you said building mini business plans, could you please tell us a specific structure to follow while building a business plan? Like how should it be, and how do you come up with a business plan, and how do you structure it and present it? Yeah.
Sure. So when that's, by the way, a good question. So if you're looking at it from that perspective to say, build a mini business plan, what I would encourage you to do is to look, there are enough frameworks available on the net, but in a broad way to put it out there is start with the market. What is the potential opportunity out there? And, you're looking at a market. If you don't know the market, let's say you're solving a particular problem, you have arrived at the conclusion that this problem could be solved in a bigger way. And now you take the first step. The first step really is to say, okay, this problem tackles what initiative, what is the bigger picture out there? The business plan helps you identify, is there a market, by the way, out there? Your market could be your hypothesis of what that market is. Maybe it's into the data protection space, or maybe it's into a customer interaction space. And it's your understanding of that market out there. The next question you want to do with that is to say, okay, with this market, what is the TAM? What could we achieve if we go after this market with this capability? And then you're trying to show an evolution of how this product would evolve with it. So you're going into step 2 to say there is a TAM. I project this market is at 5 billion. It's growing at 10%, 20%. We could get 2%. This is your hypothesis. You could put some research around it. That's step 2. The second step 2. Step 3 is, looking at it and saying, who solves for this problem today? Is there competition out there? Now, again, we talked about competition. So competition could be something, because if you're going into a new market, you could look at it and say, is there other competitors out there? What are they solving for? How are they solving for it? You outline that. Step 4 is really saying, what would you do to differentiate in that space? You're now taking it into a bigger perspective, and you're saying, there are people doing it. There's enough market. Why should we build this product? What is our edge? What is our differentiation? As you start to talk a little bit about, what is your high level view of your differentiation or your hypothesis, you could back it up the following slides with a little more color to it, which says, by doing this, we expect to grow the market. By this, we expect to enter this market, help align with this vision, this strategy, and take us this way. So you start to play out the bigger components, and then you start to lead down to the lines of saying what we should eventually build. So that's one way to look at building it. Like I said, there are enough frameworks out there and examples on the net that could help you. Yasha, I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, that really helped. And is there any specific structure or template that you would suggest, for people just trying to move into the strategic product roles? Like, I'm more focused on design and execution part, and probably if I could take some small step to build a simple business plan and present it, like any simple framework or something, or references which you could share, that would help.
Sure. So you could look at, starting with simple things like, I don't know what tool you use in your organization from a prioritization perspective, but Jira. And what do you use from a product management perspective? Is it still Jira, or do you use any other tools out there?
Jira only. Yeah, completely. Jira for managing the backlog and initiatives, it's all Jira. Yeah.
Okay. Jira has a tool called on the roadmap side of it. That's one way to look at it. But very specifically to your business case part of it, probably I could share with you some offline templates that you could look at, which just show you the case examples of how to build it, how to build out a template to work with.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir, and I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah. So extension to the previous question and the details you mentioned about the market research, and we need to see the competitors, how they're moving into the market and all the stuff, right? So see, so my question is, even most of these seminars or webinars, people used to say that we need to see the market research and what competitor is doing, etc., etc. So here, see, I'm working from an payment domain company, and see, we have a lot of info security policies where even we don't know most of the information of the products also. So if I want to excuse me, if I want to know how the competitor, the same type of products we are doing the payment processing, so this much of difficulty I'm facing in digging the details in our company with a lot of security policies. So how do we compare this kind of situations to the market, in the market, the competitors' product, like how they are doing and what kind of APIs they're doing, or what's the next business steps roadmap for next 2 years, what they're doing. So what kind of ways we find out in this kind of difficult situations to figure out that okay, this is how the competitor is looking into it, so we can do a different kind of thing from our end. So how do we figure out this kind of areas?
Very good question, Shastri. The classic product manager's dilemma. I want to know what my counterpart is doing in another company. so that I'm not caught off guard, or my boss comes down and says, look, this company has done something like this, we are completely caught off guard. Now, obviously, every company will safeguard their strategy. Every company will never disclose the big things they're working on. That's their advantage. That's the USP. And while you may want to look at it in that direction and say, where is that company going? What is that company doing at that part of it? My experience or my recommendation to you would be, it's usually a futile exercise to try and do it, because when you start to take that, you start to take a very, at times what it can do is it can backfire to you, because sometimes it may not align with your vision and strategy, and while you don't see the bigger vision and strategy that they are working to, you starting to do something completely orthogonal or just copying them may not be in your best interest. They obviously would be playing to their advantage. That said, there are two ways in which you could work with this. The first is actually to look at the analyst reports. I don't know if you have interactions with analysts like Gartner and others. So that's a top-down way to go with it. If you work in an industry where there is a magic quadrant published, or there are reviews published around it, that's one way to go and look at it. The second way to really go and look at it is to hold a session with the analyst and then say, we are going down this path of it. What is the general industry guidance? What are we seeing as big trends out there? What is the guidance to work with? How do we tackle that? So that's another way to take with it. And the third, obviously, is to go into these forums, talk to counterparts, talk to people out there, and get it. But if you're going down the path strictly to say, tell me what my competition is doing so that I can do it, I would say that's really not essentially the right way to do it. What you want to do more is, from a competitive perspective, understanding who is competition, what is their edge today, and what are they strong at, and less of where are they heading. Where they're heading is something that they would change, and you may or may not see about it. Shastri, I don't know if that kind of gives you a glimpse into your question.
Yes. Thank you.
Priyanka, I'm not sure if we are out of time or we want to pause questions here.
Yeah, we can take rest of the questions in the Q&A session at the end. We should move to the third session. So thank you, Zona, sir, for the insightful session. Now we'll move to the third session of the masterclass with Nagendra Gururaj, Director of Product Management at Telview. He brings in over 15 plus years of experience in startups and large enterprises, working across UK, Singapore, CE countries, Thailand, and India. He has worked with Tesco and Edge Networks in the product space, and he has led cross-functional teams, designed and shipped SaaS products across various geos. He also advises fast-growing startups in product management functions. And today he'll be speaking on the topic skills needed for a PM to become a senior PM, director, or VP. So from here on, I'd like to hand over the session to Nagendra, sir. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Priyanka. And you should really stop calling us sir, makes us feel a little old. But yeah, on that, it's always great to talk to people on a Saturday evening at 9 p.m. our time. I see a couple of friendly faces as well. In fact, one of my schoolmates that I haven't spoken for about a decade now, and my UCLA batchmate who I spoke with, I think, yesterday. I also Kanchan, whom I spoke with a few weeks ago from Pragmatic. So hi to everyone, and thanks for taking your time out today. I do want to go back to the question that Yasha and Shastri asked. I think these are very good questions that the both of you posed, but I think I'll cover this up and then move on to giving my take on what you've asked for. So with that said, when Praveen and Rono were providing their views and their walkthrough, I kind of found myself nodding to multiple things that they spoke about, specifically about Rono's views on the need to move to a strategic thinking, which is outcome-based thinking rather than output-based thinking. And then when Praveen spoke about the opportunity areas for, Rono's views on the strategic thinking. And when Praveen spoke about the opportunity areas for digital transformation in many industries out there, I think I couldn't agree again with him more when he says this, because there are multiple industries out there that still are awaiting to be, I dare say, disrupted, but definitely that are waiting to be digitally transformed. And retail is one of them. All this is great news to us product folks, because this only means that there are amazing opportunities out there. And again, they will continue to be so, because product manager is probably not one of those roles that can be automated. In fact, NASSCOM, probably some of you are aware of this. NASSCOM has a vision to create 50,000 product managers in India in the near term. So all this is obviously good news for us product folks. That also makes it one of the most sought out fields out there for freshers as well as experienced professionals, because again, you're all out here listening to us on a Saturday evening. So there is a lot of interest in the product management discipline. But there is also a certain degree of ambiguity around product management, and specifically the roles within it, and what skill sets are required to flourish in in the product manager discipline. So for example, everybody seems to have their own definition of what product management really is, and ambiguity doesn't really help. I've even heard people call us as everything profession, which is true. We do everything. We juggle a lot of critical things. There's not one particular thing that we have to be good at. We have to be a generalist. There are again multiple role definitions: product owner versus product manager. Product manager in Google are more engineering focused. Product managers in Microsoft are called program managers. A PM in Airbnb is typically the same, has similar competencies as a senior product manager in LinkedIn, or a head of product in an early stage company. So a lot of things all over the place. In addition, to make things more complex, the skill sets that are required is different too. So some need tech skills, some need deep functional domain skills, some need you to be an expert generalist, whatever that means. So it's a bit of an oxymoronic statement there, but there you go. That's what we probably are, an expert generalist. So with all this said, there is one fact that is pretty clear. Whatever you've learned to be a good or even a great product manager is not enough for you to be even a decent product leader. And I say that a little directly and probably a little bluntly as well, because there exists a lot of invisible traps that that you cannot really see until you really fall into one of those traps. And these kind of traps entrap many good product managers from making the transition. So what I'll probably take you through today for the next 25, I try and keep time, but 25 to 30 odd minutes, is to probably talk about some of my, how my journey has been, and what are the traps that I have seen, and how I've identified them, and how I've tried to circumnavigate them. So that's probably the next 20, 25 minutes. So let's begin with what most of you would expect out of a product career, or how the product manager's career progresses. So typically you start as an associate product manager and you progress to a product manager. Then you would expect to go into a senior product manager role. And then you would want to get into one of the product leadership roles, be it a group product manager, a product lead, an associate director, a VP, a head, say whatever the roles are. So you get into people management / product leadership roles. But it doesn't get that. This is probably the journey you expect. But the reality is something like this. There is a chasm, and the chasm is real. I was quite happy when I saw the title of this session, which is about crossing the chasm of product managers itself. Oftentimes people get stuck. Why is that? Because product leaders are not judged by their own success. Product managers are judged by their own success, but product leaders aren't. Product leaders are judged by their ability to influence up, to influence across, and to influence outside. So to do this, you need a whole new sets of skills. So it's about taking the entire organization upwards, and that's a new skill. And that's the chasm that you would see. So when you have to move from a senior product manager to product leadership role, most of you would have heard or listened to Crossing the Chasm by the amazing Jeff Morey. But that chasm exists in our product management careers as well, such as learning skills to take the entire organization upwards. Bringing an outside-in thinking to complement the inside-out thinking is a new skill. You've got to learn that as well. You probably do that a bit in your job, but you do it on a whole different level as a product leader. Letting go is a new skill. As a product manager, you probably want to or need to be in control of certain things, but as a product leader, you need to let go. Spotting the forest instead of focusing on the trees is a new skill, because as a product manager, you're so focused on the one objective, be it a North Star or be it the success metrics that you've defined. And I'm not specifically talking about features, because you shouldn't be looking at features as your main thing, but you kind of by the design of the role, you do not look at a bigger picture as to how does certain decision impact the entire portfolio, if not the entire industry. So learning that is a new skill, spotting the forest instead of focusing on the trees. Providing a safety net for people to fail is also a new skill. As product, everybody probably you've heard that you need to fail fast to learn fast. But who likes failure here? No, nobody does. But then again, there's just no other way. If you're building a product, it means you are in uncharted territories. If you're building something that you already know will succeed, you're building a solution. You're not building products. So with uncharted territories, there is equal probability of failure to success. But when somebody does fail, when your product managers do fail, you need to provide an environment, or rather you need to create a safety net for them to fail and learn from it and move on from there. So with all this, transition to product leader is not a progression of a product manager. I think that's something that I want to leave you with. Getting better at being an associate product manager would take you to be a product manager. Getting better at being a product manager would take you to a senior product manager. You can't continue doing what you do extremely well to be a product leader. You've got to do something else. Being in control is something that you've learned as a product manager, but losing control is what you need to learn as a product leader. Losing control and democratizing control is a new skill that you have to learn as a product leader as well. So as you see, transitioning from a product to a product leader from a product manager, I believe, is not by continuing to do well at your current role, but it is a whole new role in itself, which needs a unique combination of skills that require to unlearn certain instinctive reflexes. So this kind of creates a chasm for people to cross. So what is this chasm? How do PMs cross this chasm? How and why some of them get stuck? What is required to cross this chasm? These are some of the things that we'll speak about today. Rona and Praveen already broached upon some of the skills that you would need to cross this chasm. I'll kind of steer past that in the interest of time. I'll try and add a few more. I've been making some amendments to the slide as we spoke today because they've covered a bit of it. I want to focus on a few things that you probably haven't heard of, hopefully. So let's start with how to cross a chasm. I'd like to keep things simple. And I think starts with completely understanding a basic fact. And in my belief, you knowing this fact and you accepting this fact is probably contributing to a long way for you to cross a chasm. So what is that fact? That is what you got here, or rather what got you here will not get you to where you want to go. It's pretty anticlimactic, I know, apologies, but that's the simple fact. Whatever you did to get to where you got, which is as a senior product manager, you continuing to do the same things, but better, exponentially better, will still not get you to where you want to get to, which is a product leader role. Most of them probably know this, but you need to apply this consciously. So how I'd like to kind of present an app visual. I really like Visualize Value. It's a Twitter account. This kind of summarizes what I spoke about. You might be thinking you've been a full circle in terms of your skill sets as a product manager. I know you're not able to see my pointer. Let me just quickly. Yeah, you might be thinking you've got all the skills as required as a good product manager, and you probably do, but they still are just a tip of the iceberg for a product leader's role, and that's by design. So let's go back to what we were talking about. Sorry, seems to be some trouble. Okay. Can I have to share my screen again? Murphy's Law, huh? Has to. Okay. One moment. Yeah, you should see my screen again. So just to go back to that simple fact, which is what got you here won't get you there. So why is it so? Does it mean you need to learn completely new sets of skills? Yes, but not necessarily. It all lies in making certain conscious cognitive switches. To understand what those conscious choices are and what cognitive switches you need to make, Let's first look at some more relatable things. Let's talk about what makes a good product manager. So a good product manager are, of course, there are many skill sets to be a good product manager. I've tried to keep the top 4, and I've bucketed them under these 4 items. At a high level, you are, you have a complete knowledge of your product. You are the go-to person for your product. You are extremely good at the job. There's no one who can do this job better than you. You are delivering, you continue to deliver, although you're bound by various constraints, be it resourcing constraints, engineering constraints, budget constraints, pressure from the very apt cartoon strip that Rono showed in the last page. Pressure from upward on what to build and what not to build, why to build and why not to build. You've got all these constraints, but yet you continue to deliver. And of course, gaining visibility for yourself as well as gaining visibility for the product. These are the things that make a good product manager. Of course, there are many more, but I'd like to keep it at this level because this kind of encapsulates everything, isn't it? So you are considered the go-to person to your product. There's probably nobody who knows the product better than you, the past, the present, the future. You own the roadmap, you own the current features that are going in, you know what context was there and why certain things were done the way they were done. And you have all the things, all the toolkits that you need to be good at your job. You know who to talk to, and you know which customer needs which particular feature and when you want to deliver all these things. You know this, and you know how to meander through all the maze that is to deliver to the outcome that you've decided within the boundaries that have been created. But this is a little different to how, or rather what defines a good product leader. Where I see the difference is from moving from having complete knowledge of your product, you need to make that switch to having a wide knowledge across multiple products, across all the portfolio. So you shouldn't ideally have knowledge about one specific product, but you need to have wide knowledge across all the products in your portfolio. You need to switch from being extremely good at the job to empowering others to be good at their jobs. So you move from an individual contributor role to a people leader role. I hate the word people manager. So people leader, or you start empowering people. And you empower people to fail, and you empower people to flourish. So you progress, you achieve success through people's success. So you've got to make that switch. You got to make a switch from delivering, though you're bound through various constraints, to strategical resource planning and influencing others. You've got to influence your peers now. You've got to influence them to allocate budgets. You've got to influence your peers, let's say the engineering peer, to make sure that there is alignment in what you set out to do, what the roadmap is out there. So rather than being constrained by boundaries, you define the boundaries now, and you have got to strategically plan what those boundaries should be, because boundaries by definition creates friction, but you need the boundaries because in some cases boundaries create focus. And you need to switch from gaining visibility for yourselves and your product to you need to now gain visibility for your entire organization. All these again need different skill sets, and this is the switch that you need to make from a product, a outcome or an outcome, to the entire portfolio of products that is under the challenge or the capability that you are looking to build. And you need to move to moving from one specific role or one visibility to the entire organizational visibility. You need to start being extremely good at execution, and you need to move to being extremely good at inspiring people. So let's talk about how you can consciously make these switches. It's easier said than done, right, isn't it? So, but what this basically means is you need to switch from an I model to a T model and beyond. I'll explain what this means. Some of you may know this, so I'll keep this a little quick. We're also just about at the time I have, so another 15 odd minutes is what I think I should take. But we start with the breadth of experience in one axis and the depth of knowledge in the other axis. These are important factors. You've got a breadth of experience. You've got, let's say, 15, 16, 17, 10 years of experience, and then you've got deep functional knowledge in one area. That's typically what is an I model, or I shape. We are historically taught to excel in a field. I am a complete, I can completely dismiss that, because I don't think humans are built to do one thing alone and do that extremely well. Some people choose to do that, and that is perfectly all right. I respect that decision. But what this means is we spend a lot of time getting deep expertise in one area. Think about the people whom you know who have spent many years and sometimes even decades in certain practices, such as, like, let's say, the erstwhile banking sectors. We have people doing the job for 20, 30, 40 years even, and they retired in the job. That is an I model. So we've historically been a race which flourished in one type of expertise. This can also be called as an inch wide and a mile deep kind of a model, where you have expertise in a specific discipline, and you have extremely good expertise in that discipline. But what I think we should have as a bare minimum from a product manager's perspective in the discipline is a T model. This, I think, is a bare minimum, but I still do not think it's enough. A T model is where you start widening your breadth of knowledge, widening your knowledge in the sectors that you have. This, I think, like I said, is a bare minimum. You need to have a deep knowledge of certain area and branch out to other discipline, which is, let's say, a few inches wide, but still a mile deep. But what I think you all need to transition to is a pie model, which is a few more inches wide. You now have a good perception of what are the industry that you're working with, and the different disciplines in the industry that you work in. And you have a fair enough depth of knowledge in those disciplines as well. Now, this puts most of you at an advantage, because not many are in this model. Most of the big organizations are moving their talent from the I to T, and some of them are moving from the T to pi. So you moving to a pie model, which means you have multiple expertise in multiple, or rather deep expertise in multiple disciplines, will put you at an advantage. Finally, the utopian goal is to move into what is called a comb-shaped model, which is a mile wide and a mile deep. This is literally limitless potential. So can this be achieved? Maybe a few will, maybe a few can, but this is probably a utopian goal. And the reason I call it a utopian goal is it's extremely deep knowledge in wide variety of subjects, which not many people have. So for example, this is you being able to conduct an orchestra and be the best product leader ever possible, while you're also a Wimbledon champion in a tennis, of course, tennis, a Wimbledon champion. Not many can. So, but that's utopian goal. At least I feel it's a utopian goal. I can probably settle for a pie model, which is this, which should be your starting point. You'll have to kind of self-assess to see where you are. Are you an I? Are you T? Are you in a pie? And then make those calls. I'll probably talk to you. Maybe can take some questions later on to see how I can help you with that self-assessment tools. To do this, right, you need certain skill sets. So what are those skill sets? So let me classify these skill sets into primary pillars. So the first primary pillar, which all of you know as soft skills, but I don't like the term soft skills because they're real skills. Soft skills kind of degrades what they are. For a product manager's real skills are real. You do need these real skills to flourish in the role. Business acumen, that's another pillar that you've got to be extremely good at. Domain intellect is another pillar that you need to be good at, and technical intellect, that is one of the last pillars that I have for you that I think you should be good at. Again, the word technical, I use it a little differently, and I'll talk to you about it when we get there. So let's first talk about the real skills. First one, which is literally a job, that is communication. I would argue that communication is the single most important thing of a product leader as well as a product manager. You've got to get really good at communications. You need to be, when I say communication, it is about ensuring that, what does communication do? Communication aligns the entire organization towards one specific thing. And that is the single most important thing that you do as a product leader. And you need to really build up on your communication skills. And that doesn't mean that you need to be the best English speaking person out there in the world. That is not what it means. It means that you're articulate enough and you're eloquent enough when you make a conversation, and you are you take, or rather you focus on the right things to say and don't say it around the bush. So you got to say what it is, and you also got to say what it isn't. Strategy is almost when Rono spoke about strategy, one of the things that I made a mental note to tell the group is strategy is often what you decide to do, but a big part of strategy is also articulating what you will not do. So I think that is extremely critical, and that's extremely critical to be communicated to create alignment. The next one is empowering people. Empowering people is trickier than it sounds. As a PM, you are probably an individual contributor, but now you've got to manage people. You've got to mentor them. You've got to guide them. You've got to give them feedback. You've got to care about their future. You've got to care about their certain personal circumstances as well, because that impacts their work. And you've got to empathize with that. You've got to learn the art of delegation. You've got to set goals, and you also have to kind of decipher or craft means to measure those goals and come up with the results. You've got to hire in cases, you've got to also manage people out. All this comes around empowering people. And I'm a big believer of the single most important job of a product leader is that of removing impediments for your people. You're not there to tell the people or your people what they need to do. They already know that. You've got to make sure that the obstacles that are in their way, you remove those obstacles for them. That I think is the single most important job of a product leader. So you've got to get good at empowering people. You can start practicing in small things right now as a product manager. You can start working with, start letting go of certain things with the designer and make sure that they understand why, and then they go ahead and do it on their own, because you've got to democratize control. You can't be in control all the time. Being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Again, one of the most important skills that you need to get. You probably have some of these skills already as a product manager, but a product leader is probably the most, when I say the most, you probably have the responsibility to take the entire organization along with you. And you've got to make sure that the entire organization is moving at the same pace with the correct alignment. It sounds like a Herculean task. It probably is as well. But that is the job. That is the job of a product leader or a product person. To flourish, you've got to kind of step away from thinking that you're the answer provider to being the question asker and then the answer seeker. You've got to move away from this mode that I like what I think it was Rono who said about being proud of the feature you build. No, you should move away from being proud of the feature you built, and you need to start getting proud about the problem you identified that led to the feature being built. So you need to ask more questions and get the answer from someone else. You've got to let go of that emotional connect to the pride that you feel in solving something. You got to get you've got to start being extremely proud that we all together as an organization solve the right problem. There could be multiple ways to solve the problem, and this is why I want to talk to Shastri about why you shouldn't really dwell too deep into what your competitors are doing. In some cases, the competitors are playing a game, and I don't say that as a political game. There is a game theory. You should read about some case studies about how Ryanair came in. Ryanair is a budget airline in the UK. How Ryanair came in the early 80s, I think, and how the relevant really big players, including British Airways and United Airlines, how they let Ryanair become big, because they didn't know what Ryanair was doing, because Ryanair said something and did something else. So if you're following the strategy of what your competitors are saying, they're not fools. They're probably saying things that they want you to hear, but they do something else. So you've got to learn to take the entire organization with you and be comfortable in these uncomfortable situations. And finally, you've got to build trust and respect. I think this is the single most important thing that product leaders should do. These are the two things that you need, but it diminishes in value when you ask for it. You can't ask people for, trust me, I'll get this done. You got to respect me. You really can't ask for these things, but you need to build it. That is, you need to build relationship. You need to invest in building relationships. You can start with building the relationship with your engineering leads, the people that you work with day in and day out. But when you start becoming a product leader, you've got to start moving into a kind of a different mindset, which is the concept of a first team. Interestingly, I was talking to the VP of engineering in my organization just last week, and he also brought this up, the concept of a first team. And I thought it's good to share this with you. So let me just pause and quickly digress to what is meant by a first team. Building a first team mindset basically means you prioritize the team you are in over the team you lead, which means if as a product leader, your peers are your first team, not the people who report to you. Why is that important? Because the first team is, when you make the first team as the leaders in the organization, you start having a business perspective and not a narrow vertical of your organization perspective. Product leaders means they are leaders. And what do leaders do? Leaders lead the entire organization. They just don't lead a section of it. They are bothered about what's happening in the marketing division. They are also bothered about what's happening in the sales division. You've got to be bothered about it because you've got to fix and identify problems and solve those problems along with the other leaders in your organization. So your first team really are the leaders in the organization, not necessarily the members who report to you. So it was kind of, it's best articulated by Patrick Lencioni. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But if you just search for Patrick and first team, you can read more about it. It's basically the idea that true leaders prioritize supporting their fellow leaders over their direct reports, that they're responsible to their peers more than they are responsible to the individuals who report to them. So you got to build this first team mindset. That then once you start doing this and start practicing some of this in your current job, people start taking notice, and that's how you can cross the chasm, because you've got to let people show that you are moving, you're making the transition. All right, let me quickly move to the next one, which is building the business acumen. There's a huge misnomer that MBAs make great product managers. I've got no qualms about MBAs or no disrespect to the MBAs. I mean, they have struggled a lot to get to where they are, where they got to, but that is a misnomer. But what is really, I mean, what couldn't be more correct is product managers are first business managers. So they need to have business acumen. What does that mean? Again, business acumen includes things such as how do you enhance margins? What does that mean? Enhancing margin means how do you ship things that are profitable? How do you monetize things? How do you make sure that whatever you do are profitable? How do you connect business strategy to the product portfolio? This is again an extremely important aspect of a product leader. You've heard about product roadmaps and strategies, and Rono and Praveen both spoke about being a strategic product leader. It's about how do you take the business strategy? And the business strategy could be, we need to grow 5x this year. We need to onboard 10x this year. That is a business strategy. It could be a business strategy or it could be something else. But you need to understand what the business strategy is. We need to be the best in the entire industry. You take that business strategy and you deliver that through the product strategy. And then from the product strategy, which defines the what you're doing and the why you're doing, you take it forward to creating certain initiatives within your organization as to these are the initiatives or these are the massive projects that you'll run this year to fulfill that particular goal that the business has set. And each of those initiatives will follow under what is basically the roadmap that you'll deliver, because the roadmap talks about the when something is coming, the initiatives and the strategy talks about the what is coming and the why we are doing it. So you need to ensure that each and every team member is aware of that connection between how a business strategy is aligned to adding a single button on your product, because that needs to be connected. If it's not connected, then that's room for people coming and sneaking in things and people doing things which does not necessarily cater your business strategy or your business goals. You need to neutralize your competitors' edge over you. We spoke about competitors as well, and this is important. There are again two schools of thought. The one school of thought which talks about monopolizing and just don't bother about your competitors, to other school of thought where you need to keep constant track of your competitors. Again, it completely depends on which industry you're in, but competitors are real. So you've got to neutralize your competitors' edge over you. And there are ways to do that, and we'll probably talk about that in the question and answer session. And finally, you need to build business models. Again, going back to what Praveen and Rona were talking about, you need to build business models, you need to build pricing strategies, and you need to build alliances. By alliances, I mean you need to build partnerships with outside folks, you need to build partnerships with inside folks. So let's move on to the third one, which is the domain intellect, which is also the domain knowledge. But let me first clarify by what I mean by domain intellect. This means having a clear understanding of the industry you're in, understanding the players within that industry, your customer segments, and your customers' nuances, and even your customers' idiosyncrasies. And then you need this. Why do you need all this knowledge? You need this to craft visions and strategies. Because as a product leader, you do that. You are a visionary. So how are you a visionary? You can't be a visionary without understanding your customers. Steve Jobs is a great example of a visionary. He told the customers what they wanted when the customers didn't even know that they wanted it. So he could really think far ahead. I mean, that doesn't come without having a deep understanding of customers, their idiosyncrasies, who are the eccentric ones, what are the things that work for some, what are the things that do not work for some, whom should you be bothered about, whom should you ignore, things like that. So how do you build domain intellect? You probably build by following visionaries. That's a very good start. You look at people out there, and there are certain leaders, product leaders out there that you can follow on Twitter. They are still alive, and you can follow them on Twitter, and you can use this as your continuous learning exercise. Get a mentor. I can't emphasize this on this enough. Everybody needs a mentor. I mean, I also have my own set of mentors, and I reach out to them every now and then, and they give me really good feedback. And I think you need to have a view of who your mentors are. You need to study competition, and you need to talk to your customers. End of the day, without talking to your customers, you can't do much. So you need to be talking to your customers. So a lot of people argue that domain intellect is probably the most difficult thing to do or to get. I disagree. This is true with building intellect. Building intellect is always a learnable trait. Building relationship, on the other hand, is much more difficult. There's a lot more unknowns in that, and it takes nurturing. It takes time to build relationships, but it does reap you multifold benefits when it's done right. Because having a good relationship with your engineering lead can also make sure that when you falter with the technical knowledge, the engineering person will forgive you because you've got a good relationship with that person. So this brings us to the final pillar, which is the technical skills or the technical intellect. Again, I use technical as a broad term. When I say technical, I relate it to a product within the product discipline. It's about the arts and crafts, the frameworks and the techniques used within the product discipline, not necessarily the R's and Pythons and TensorFlows of the world. So there are many debates on whether PMs need tech skills. I'm on the end that says you need just enough tech skills to have a conversation with the engineering team so that you or the lack of your technical skills doesn't slow down the process. So just enough is what you need. What that means is you understand your technical landscape. You know what tech stack is used and why the tech stack is used. You understand the decisions behind that. UX is another one of those technical or rather one of those techniques that you need to be extremely comfortable with. Everybody is looking for a great experience right now, and you need to be delivering that. Product development lifecycle, the multiple ways to build products, and you need to find out what best fits your organization. Frameworks are there to be tweaked. Famous last words, I think, but you need to make sure that a framework that you use is fit for purpose within your organization. You don't fit your organization to a framework because organizations' cultures are different. Its organization is a living organism. So you've got to make sure that the framework you bring in is fit for purpose for your organization. And finally, you need to look at the process, methods, and frameworks that are there. And you need to make sure that you are there to take calls about what is working, what is not working. Something that I want to talk about is building things such as inclusive design. I'll talk about that in the last slide for the day, which is, okay. Final words, periodically assess. What this means is you've got to assess yourselves. And you've got to assess about your areas of improvement, and you've got to work towards bettering them. So you've got to assess your strategies, you've got to assess your competitors, your market, your customer dynamics, and everything. So you've got to periodically take stock of what's happening. If there's one place where things aren't a constant, it's here in product management. You've got to think beyond your team. We spoke about the first team concept, and you've got to think beyond your team. Your team, yes, of course, you need to think about them, but that's a no-brainer. But you've got to think beyond them. You've got to think about your leaders. You've got to think about your competitors. You've got to think about the market. You've got to obviously think about your customers. You've got to think strategically, but you've got to execute tactically. So be strategic in your thinking, but be tactical in your execution. Don't execute things that takes months and months. Govern, not control. So one of the things that I keep saying a lot of people is you get control by giving control. Sounds weird, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Building an autonomous environment only builds trust in the entire process, and who wouldn't want to be in an autonomous environment? So you've got to obviously govern. So govern is more important than having control. You've got to be responsible. As product leaders and product managers, you've got a massive authority as to how the decisions that you take can impact a lot of lives. And as a matter of fact, when we're talking about being inclusive, there is a need to be responsible for people who access your platform. So if there is differently able people, if there is, let's say, a blind person who needs to access your platform, how can they? You need to design for people of every abilities to be able to access your platform. So you need to be responsible because you owe it to your customers. And finally, ship. Nothing progresses without shipping. So ship features, ship capabilities, ship outcomes. I'm going to stop here because I want to keep this interactive, and I think we can start taking some questions now. Yasha, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi Nagendra. I have two questions. One is when you were talking about the T-shaped and pie-shaped structure which one should target. Can you please explain what did you mean by having understanding vertically and in one discipline depth? Like, could you give an example of what do you mean by a discipline and what do you mean by the area in which you need to have breadth knowledge? Like, is it an industry or is it a I mean, I didn't understand that. And you mean vertical knowledge? Like, could you give an example? What do you mean? Is it like a communication skill, soft skill, or what do you mean by a discipline? Second is you were saying to analyze which structure you fall in. There are you need to do some self-assessment. And if you could walk through some self-assessment tools, or how can one do self-assessment also to understand which discipline he has more knowledge on, or which structure he falls in. Yeah.
Sure thing. I'll take a second question first. It's something that I can share offline. There is a website which has an open source framework to perform or rather self-assess your individual competencies. There is also GitLab, which publishes how their CDF works, a career development framework, has been built for product managers. It's a great place to have a look. So I'll share both of the links post this call. But your first question on the T-shaped and the pie-shaped and the I-shaped, basically what I mean is, as product leaders, you've got to have a breadth of experience. You can't dig deep into a lot of things, but you need to ensure that there are certain disciplines and certain areas that you've got good expertise in, because you are the thought leader. So you need to have points of views and you need to have opinions over things that are backed by data and backed by facts. So what you've got to do, as an example, is get really deep into the UX practice, and also get really deep into the prioritization practice. You've got to be really good at how to prioritize stuff. And you also have to get really deep into what are the different business model frameworks that are there. Because you as a product leader are building a business while you're also building products. You've got multiple things that you're doing, and you can't have opinions and points of views if you don't have deep knowledge about these areas. So you can start with some of the biggest disciplines in product management. You can take things such as, like I said, the business models, the UX practice, the prioritization frameworks, because these are the three things probably that you will haunt you each and every day. Then you have to increase it to data analytics. What are the different things out there for performing data analytics? This doesn't mean that you are the person who does it, but it means that you're the person who enables people to do it. So if it means that you need to now go procure a license for something, you know which one to go and invest in. So that's what I mean by having good knowledge in multiple streams of areas.
Got it. So is there any list that I can go through, like some of these disciplines that you're highlighting? One is UX, one is this. So is there a list of fields that, one can understand what is the master list of those disciplines and what is the master list of those breadth areas?
Sure. The CBOK that I told you that GitLab has, it has a bunch of those competencies, and also the open source framework that I said that has a bunch of competencies. So with that, you'll be able to both self-assess as well as discover what are the competencies that you need to be great at.
Okay. Open source framework, is it?
I will send you the links. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
And going back to your earlier question, Yasha, I think if you go to leanstack.com, I'm a lean canvas is a good business model canvas for you to get started with. Rona was right. There are multiple frameworks out there, it's you should probably start with lean canvas because I like the concept of it. It has everything in one page, and it forces you to think about customers and problem pairing first, and that I think is crucial for anything. So leanstack.com is a website. It allows you to build a lean canvas. Ash Maurya is the person who kind of created this. He took it off the business model canvas, and there are very helpful videos that allows you to that helps you along the way. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Yasha.
Thank you.
No worries. Abhishek, you got a question?
Hi, Nagendra. Very good evening. It's always a wonderful opportunity to speak with you. So my question is more sort of a scenario based. So as you mentioned, there has to be a relationship between, product managers. If you are at a position of a senior product or lead product, then you need to have a relationship across the peers. So when you talk about an overall objective where you have a problem statement that needs to be, solved, to solve that particular problem statement, there are a couple of products which will work in sync, to achieve the overall objective. It's not just one product which may achieve the entire organization goal or the aspirations that they have. Now, coming to that point, when different products working towards the same objective are working in sync, there are multiple product managers owning that different pieces of the products, right? Now, everybody will try to ensure that their product gets the maximum visibility, and of course that you're going to face some sort of obstacle, some sort of resistance, and somebody who's at a position to take a call, they will prefer something over a different product. So how do you personally remove those obstacles and ensure that your product gets the visibility that it needs?
Sure. I think it starts with why. I think I'm echoing Simon Sinek now, but it really does. It starts with why. Why is one product more important than another? Because in everything else, everything is equal, but it isn't so. There are certain objectives that we want to achieve as a business, which make sure that one product is prioritized over another product. And that is fine because that is the business decision. So when you get together as to what is our business goal, and when you identify that this is the business goal and everyone's aligned to that business goal, then the prioritization is post fact. So you prioritize because of something that's been defined, and you know that the business strategy is to, let's say, let's say the business strategy is to increase one particular adoption in one particular area of it, because that is the most profitable area of the business. So what would make product sense is to invest in that capability and keep the other capabilities a little slow. And that makes perfect sense, which means that we're all in this together. So it doesn't matter if one product takes a higher priority over the other product, because that is the nature of the game, and that's the course of the life of a product as well. Products rise and products fall. Experiments are falsified and experiments are validated. So if one of the products is an experiment, then there's a 50% chance that that'll be sunset. So once people understand this, that the reason why we are doing this is not driven by certain politics or driven by ego or driven by personal subjective opinions, it's driven by objective business strategy, once that is aligned and once that is transparent to everybody, I think that goes a long way in removing any obstacles.
Okay, sure.
Oh, Kanchan?
Hey, Nagi. Thanks for this insightful session. I really enjoyed it. But just got one question. So as in the session, what I understood, like being into the leadership role, you're like instead of getting into more control, you be on the governing side and take pride in identifying problems, but not shipping the features. So these all things in a bigger goal make sense to me. But one thing which is stuck for me is like, when we are talking about defining the product goals based on, or defining the initiative for the product based on company's vision. So as a product manager also we do the same job. So how this particular objective, like approach towards this particular objective change when switch to a leadership role?
Sure. As always, a good question, Kanchan. So I think it's related to when you say the product vision and how it changes from being a product manager to a product leader. Your scope of, or rather your scope itself has increased. You now are not accountable for one outcome, but you're accountable for business growth, which is why I went back to the first team concept, right? And building the first team mindset. You're not accountable for the success of your function alone. You're accountable for the success of your organization. And the way you can practice that, I'm not saying you should do that right now. I'm not saying you should start building your first team as the people who you work with. No, you need to be worried about your team as well. But you need to start slowly bringing this into your work ethic on your work day. And what you probably have to do is start taking decisions that take into consideration the impact it has on the other product. Because if this has an impact on that, and that means that you don't deliver to the business strategy, what's the point of us shipping that cool feature that we always wanted to have? Because it'll cause more pain than gain. So we'd rather not take that decision. So what you just did is you didn't ship a feature, you took a decision that is aligned with the business strategy, that is aligned to the business growth. And that brings a visibility towards for people around you. And that's what will help you take that transition or make the transition across the chasm.
Got it. I think practicing it will, give it us better understanding.
Of course. It's all about when you're prioritizing a feature in your work, you start looking at the downstream impact. Me doing this, how does it impact someone else? Am I going to cannibalize another product by delivering this feature? So it might grow your product, but that's not the decision you need to take, because you shouldn't grow at the expense of the death of some other product unless that is a strategic motive.
Good. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks, Amin.
No problem. All right. I think those are the hands that were raised. Any other questions, or back to you, Priyanka?
Actually, so somebody has raised.
Yes.
But I would request both the speakers to join in so that all of the three speakers can, give their opinions. So if you're there, Rona sir and Praveen sir, can you please join? And also we have got some questions in our registration form, so we can take a few of them from there also.
Sure, Priyanka, we'll let you read the questions for us, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
See, Yasha has raised her hand. So Yasha.
Yeah. Please, Yasha, go ahead.
Thank you, Priyanka. So Nagendra, one more question regarding the first team approach. Like you said, what I understood was that you need to prioritize the team you're a part of rather than the team you're leading, right? But then the team you're part of, they're actually your peers, and but they're actually your competitors. So what do you actually mean by advocating them more?
Yeah, it's interesting you put it that way. So again, I don't think that your peers are your competitors. It's good to keep it that way. But even if you were to take that stance, I think you knowing your enemy is much better than you knowing your friends. Let me put it that way. Not calling your peers as your enemies, but in that line of thinking, right? But when I say your first team should be your peers, what I mean is just going back to what I was talking to Kanchan about. It's important for you to feel and empathize with how the decisions that you take impact the peers that you have, because you need to be cognizant of the fact. Otherwise, you're going to take decisions, and that will make you and your team competitors to yourselves, and that probably can create a healthy environment, but as long as it's aligned to the business objective. Now, when there isn't an alignment to the business objective, then that causes a lot of friction. It's like, I'm going to do this. I don't care what he or she does, but I'm going to go and do this. So that is what we want to be avoiding, and starting to show evidences of you caring about your peers as much as you caring about your team is important, and that goes in some way to improve your visibility and improve your standing in the product organization as well within your company.
Okay.
But Praveen, feel free to chime in as well.
No, I think you summarized it well.
Yeah, that already summarized well, Nagendra. Thank you.
Sure, Praveen, thanks. Priyanka, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I have so actually we are already short on times, but we can take two more questions and then we can bind up the session. So I'm going to read the first question, which is asked by Pradeep. So Pradeep is asking, how is the frequent change in market requirement or acceptance handled in product development? What steps to be taken care during new product development that suit market needs? Yeah.
I'll probably take a go at it, and Nagendra, Praveen, you can add to it. So I think the overall question you're asking is, how fast should we be adapting to the market when we see a change? What happens on the development side? Do we stop everything, reboot, and start all over again? I think the question really depends on what vertical or what area you operate in and what luxury you have to work with. Generally, when you take a hypothesis on a market and you're making a bet out there, there are multiple levels you're looking at it. The first part is you're making a bet on a market, you're making a hypothesis or a journey that you envision where the market is headed, you started to build out. So that's the high level view, the high level direction that you're taking in. The lower part to it is really the tactics. Should I be building this feature? Should I be changing this? I have these 10 things to do. Now the market is pivoting. I see other people launching some products out there. Should I be in front of it? That's more driven really at, how does it align to your direction that you're looking at? If you feel that, as an example, in your new product development cycle, you're really launching and starting at a stage, you don't have enough market validation to back it up, then probably you'd use that as a guideline to say, maybe, this is what a bulk of our customers are telling or prospects are telling, maybe we need to pivot and do that. If you're at a stage where, you are in a mature product or your product is reasonably with a good customer size, then you would take a slightly different approach saying, maybe that's what competition is doing, or that's where the market is headed, but we could do something in a very different direction. So that question really depends on where your product is, what maturity it is. And it also depends on, are you talking about a shift in the market, or are you talking really about the tactics you want to employ? Is it more of a feature that I should be building faster? Should I be reacting? Or is it really the bigger play that you're looking at? Nagendra, Praveen, any of you guys want to add to it?
No, not really. I think you summarized it well. Yeah, I mean, just in the interest of time, I think you've covered most of it. So yeah, I'd go with what you said.
Okay. So the next question is by Mohammed. He's asking, what after product owner role? How to transition to director level?
Praveen, do you have any thoughts on that? I can go, but if you have any thoughts, I'd let you.
Yeah, I think I'll take a stab at it, right? So essentially, as Nagendra showed in his presentation, right, it's really important to build those, have those multi-pronged approach where you go deeper into the particular domain, right? So not only building a T-shaped competency, but also build a pie-shaped competency. So multiple domains, and you also have a breadth of different areas, segments, or the industry knowledge. Okay, that's really key to the to go to the next level. But apart from the domain knowledge, one more aspect that I'll point out is as you grow in the organization, and especially in the product organization, you typically don't have a lot of people or a lot of headcount in the product organization, essentially, right? So one of the key skill that you should acquire as you want to grow in the product organization is the people management skills, right? So how do you really lead the team, lead the initiatives, and have other people do the work. Even if you are best at what you do, okay, how do you empower other people to achieve the same outcomes, okay, and then create a multiplier effect. Okay, so that's really a key for moving and transitioning from the product owner to the product manager to the leadership role in the product organization. Yeah, Nagendra, you want to add anything? Yeah.
No, Praveen, I think that covers it. No.
So there's another question by Varun. He is asking how to transition from service delivery role into product management role.
I can take that unless Rona or Praveen, you have real experience. I'll be talking theory. Varun's a good friend of mine, so I can talk to him later as well. So if you guys have any views, then you can pitch in.
Yeah, I can give my experience actually. Okay, because I was working for Cognizant in this similar, project management and the service delivery roles. So how it worked for me is I actually had a good domain knowledge in the supply chain and the logistics domain. So I was managing an ecosystem for the Lowe's, which is a home improvement retailer in the US, for their logistics ecosystem, right? So I had that deep understanding of the domain, and then it's really a fascinating domain because you can see the real life effect on the roads in terms of how the routes are planned, how the trucks are moving, and which goods, which inventory they're moving around, right? So that domain knowledge indeed helped me when I wanted to get into the product management, because the next company that I joined as a product manager was the actually the vendor of the system that I used to manage, right? So that domain knowledge, I would say, is definitely very, very important. And second thing is the sessions like these are even better than maybe a longer product management sessions or the courses that you can take from the pragmatic leaders or from other sources will definitely add value in terms of gaining that product experience, and then the domain and the product management knowledge should get you into the right role. Okay, may not be as easy as it seems, but yeah, that probably are the two essential elements for you to even go and then try in that area.
Great. So there's another question, which it will be a last question. It's by Samnathan. So he's asking, is navigating in your current company is the best way to get to a product leadership role? It's not easy to convince a new company. What you can do as a leader when you when your current role in your current company is an individual contributor role.
I can probably take that and allow the others to chime in as well. I think that's a very prudent approach. If your current company has those openings and if you're able to make that shift, it's an extremely prudent approach for you to do that, because that's I think the path of the least friction, both for you and for your organization. But that's not to say that's the only way. I think now the industry is opening up, and I'm talking on behalf of both Rono and Praveen, people of the experience that we have. We didn't probably start our careers as product managers. We started as something else and we moved into product managers. And that is the way it has been for people who have over 15 years, 10, 15 years of experience as product managers. They didn't start their careers as an associate product manager. So increasingly what I believe, and I definitely follow this within my hiring practice itself, we don't hire for a product manager, we hire for the product mindset. As long as you're able to showcase your product mindset, you will do well. So starting with the difference between, let's say, a product owner versus a product manager, why is that difference there? Product owner, one of the most accepted definitions is that product owners are internal focused and product managers are external focused. That's one of the most accepted definitions of product owners. But things like that, right? And being problem focused rather than solution focused. It's kind of engraved into us to solution, be the solution provider. No, you should be the problem seeker and then also be the solution provider. So I think showcasing your product mindset more will go a long way in making the transition and convincing the person at the other end that you have the mindset. But even to get in the room, you need to build a really good resume to begin with. And one of the things, one quick thing that I can talk to you about what you need to include in your resume is facts and achievements and not a job description. There's no point of really having responsibilities and highlighting what are the responsibilities that you had. That is not how a product manager resume should be. If I see a resume which has that, then I know that this person does not have a product mindset, because a product manager is always thinking, or a person with a product mindset is always thinking numbers first. What were the achievements? What did I do? What did I learn? Where did I fail? Things like that. So these are the evidences that you should have in your resume, and that'll go a long way in you getting noticed. But starting in your own company is probably the most prudent way to get into the domain. Okay.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Narendra sir. Um, so I think it's time now. We are already 17 minutes ahead on what we decided. So it's time to wrap up the session. So first, I'd like to thank all our speakers for taking out time today and conducting the very insightful masterclass session for our community members at Pragmatic Leaders. And special thank to everybody who joined us on Saturday evening and stayed till the very end. Um, and soon we'll send a follow-up communication to all of you. So please take out 2 minutes of your time to share your feedbacks. And you can also reach out to us at community@pragmaticleaders.io with all the topics that you want us to cover in the future masterclass sessions. And we have a few masterclass sessions lined up for the next week. So we'll keep you posted. Until then, have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.